RBI was appointed onto the board of Yes Bank as a director. In June 19, again another set of fines were levied, saying, no, it is not happening, you don't seem to be having a good compliance culture, here we go, another fine. A chief financial officer was also newly appointed. And it was only in September 19 that you had a complete giving away of the shares. I mean, stake was completely sold of the earlier promoter. All this while, there was also this promise being given saying we are getting more money from here, we are getting new equity here, somebody coming from Hong Kong is giving us money, and very genuinely attempts were made to get new equity infusion done into the bank. Genuinely a lot of attempts were made, but nothing materialized. Period after period, the RBI was also informing us that they've given them more time so that they can get fresh equity, fresh infusion of cash, so that the bank's health can be restored. And every time you had to give them the space and margin, because after all, if there is a genuine attempt being done, let them get it. But it didn't happen at all. As a result, it went on like that. And once in November 19, it was very clear that no longer there was hope for them to get any more money. And coincidentally, the chairman of the audit committee also resigned early January 2020. Things came to a serious pass. And that is when I think we intensely engaged, as we were continuing the engagement, a lot of other ideas with which we were talking with the RBI was talking with the management. I've asked the RBI now actually to go into assessing what actually has caused these difficulties for the Yes Bank. I've asked him to find out and assess as to where the problem, the causative problem lies. And also clearly identify the role played by various individuals in the problem, in creating the problem and not so comprehensively addressing the problem. And I've also asked the RBI to tell me about adequacy of the extant regulatory norms, also the supervisory norms, and if found inadequate, where and why. I have asked them for a report on this. And I've also asked the RBI to act so that the due process of law takes its course with a sense of urgency. Whilst the government, our government is completely committed to ensure that the depositor's interest is completely safeguarded, equally, I want the RBI to ensure that due process of law is set to roll with a sense of urgency so that we should find out as to who led to this problem, a problem of this size and magnitude in the Yes Bank. The steps, of course, which are taken by RBI as it is are several. I'll just narrate. Yesterday, on their request, we've given the clearance for bringing a moratorium onto the bank, which is for the next 30 days. The withdrawal limit has been capped. Supersession of the management, meaning the bank's board. Then an appointment of a administrator who happens to be a former chief finance officer of the State Bank of India. And then, even as we speak, they have put in a scheme for restructuring the bank. Already the RBI's website should be having it, and that scheme will be effected within the period of the moratorium, which means within 30 days, we expect that scheme to fully come into play so that depositors are not troubled for too long. As it is, I understand they are putting through a rigorous pain when a moratorium comes into play, but RBI has assured me that the restructuring plan, which is up now in RBI's website, will come into play within the moratorium period, within 30 days that is, so that customers are not, or depositors are not going to be troubled. SBI has expressed a willingness to definitely invest in the Yes Bank. And the bank shall also invest in the equity of the reconstruction process, which is required, the equity which is required for the reconstruction process. In the administrator's place, when the restructuring happens, a new board will be brought to place. So the administrator does his job and he exits, and then a complete new board will be put in place. This is important. Deposits and liabilities will continue unaffected as before. I know there is this temporary capping, but we shall continue every deposit and the liability unaffected, which means it will be honored. Important again, employment and salary assured at least for 1 year. I've just given you some of the highlights of the scheme which the RBI has put up in its website. You're welcome to have a look at it. But if you very clearly look at the Yes Bank's problems, I would like to recollect the steps that I've been talking about. The bank was monitored very closely from 2017. The MD and CEO have been forced to leave as of September 18. RBI has appointed one of its former deputy governors onto the board of Yes Bank as a director. Then several enforcement actions have been taken up. One of the chairman himself had to come out because of the action by CBI. Regulatory violations, the guidelines have been violated, have been picked up, and fines have been levied. The bank was instructed to raise capital in a time-bound manner, for which the RBI gave 3 tranches of time. Each time a genuine attempt was made to bring in more capital, but each time it failed. As a result, nothing could go on. Particularly in the last 6 months, day-to-day monitoring has been kept up. I remember, and I'm sure many of you all will recollect, that I have repeatedly said I shall not allow any institution to fall off the cliff. I do now remember that I had said this in the context of NBFCs, but we also have been closely monitoring banking institutions and shadow banking institutions. For the last 6 months, the monitoring has been almost on an everyday basis. I would like to tell you that. And one indication, not so much to speak of or not so much to take names, but it is important for the media to also know the exposure of Yes Bank to some of the very stressed corporates has been since before 2014. Since before 2014. I wouldn't even mind taking their names because obviously these are public domain information. I'm not violating anybody, any customer's privacy. Anil Ambani Group, SL Group, DHFL, IL&FS, Vodafone are some of those very stressed corporate to whom Yes Bank has been exposed. And this is from prior to 2014. Now if I say all this, why do I say it here? I see the opposition being very keen to point a finger at this. I'm not here to continue carrying the stories of legacy. Legacy, yes, the Indian banking system has had severe challenges thanks to the way in which the government which existed between 2004 and 14 had handled the matters the way they handled it. But I'm not saying it because I have to put the blame on them. But I have reasons to put the blame on them. I'll give you even instances. They are telling us about, oh, look at the way you've handled it. Yes bank is no bank. You don't know how to handle it. Again, the so-called self-appointed competent doctors are saying this. And the so-called self-appointed competent doctors were the ones who handled United Western Bank. Do you all remember? United Western Bank, which collapsed in 2006, almost on the verge of collapse, 2006, forcefully merged with IDBI. And today, if I have problems restoring some good health of IDBI, I'm giving you a pointed example of how competent, self-appointed competent doctors had handled United Western Bank's merger with IDBI. IDBI went down, United Western Bank was anyway challenged, and that is the treatment offered by those who speak today about the way we've ensured that the interest of Yes Bank and its customers are kept safe. We are doing that. Whereas what they did was this, and their solution for a United Western Bank has resulted in IDBI also losing its moorings. So, self-appointed competent doctors. Global Trust Bank. When did that happen? I'm sure you in the media will definitely remember. July 2004. It was merged with Oriental Bank of Commerce. Solution, right? Easily merge it up and wash your hands off. Third, Ganesh Bank of Kurundwad. This was merged with a private bank, Federal Bank. And when did this happen? 2006 January. And in all three, let me ask, you immediately merged and washed your hands off. How many people did they take action on? How many people did they bring to books to say these were the reasons for which these banks faced challenge? And here are we having them quickly jump to see and say, oh no, you don't know what you are doing. You don't know how you're handling economic affairs. We are ensuring the customers' interests are intact. We are ensuring that the depositors are assured and their monies will be safe. Not like this. Impose and merge it off with some banks, let go those offenders, and now ask uncomfortable questions, uncomfortable for yourselves. I have no problem answering opposition's questions on our handling of the Indian economy. I'll answer every one of it. But our approach has been to make sure that the institutions don't collapse, keep them with good health, and above all, keep the customer's interest, client's interest, business's interest, depositors' interest safe. And that is why, Prime Minister insisted that we increase the deposit insurance from 1 lakh to 5 lakh. So, I would like you all to kindly take all on the board. We can assure through you once again all the depositors that their money is safe. We shall ensure that very speedily this will be resolved and a restructuring of this bank will happen in the interest of the depositors and the interest of the economy. Thank you.
Ma'am, my question is, as you said, now you've asked RBI to give a detailed report on what actually led to this wrongdoing. Apart from RBI, other investigative agencies are also going to look into the matter, whether there is any case of money laundering, etc., because there have been complaints. What is the action that you'll be taking on the governance issues, because you said corporate governance was not to the best of the mark that should have been, whether MCA, whether SFIO or ED or any other such agencies will be looking after the then management?
Well, the SEBI has already started acting. So they will, as a regulator of the markets, they will also be looking into it. As we go on, we'll be able to speak about it. But today, I'm talking about the restructuring plan which the RBI is taking up, and we are constantly monitoring it closely.
But the State Bank of India, you said,
मैम जो स्कीम RBI ने जारी किया ड्राफ्ट स्कीम उसके मुताबिक 49% रजिस्टर्ड क्या स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया के अलावा किसी निजी इन्वेस्टर से बातचीत हो रही है, निजी बैंक से बातचीत हो रही है इसमें इन्वेस्टमेंट के LIC?
RBI is taking the initiative on this, so it will be they who probably gradually वो भी उनकी तरफ से इसका विवरण भी देंगे, मगर आज मेरे तरफ से इतना ही मैं कह पाऊंगी.
Ma'am, I wanted to know that does Yes Bank have enough liquidity to return to the deposits right now? What is the position of Indian deposits?
Well, I think RBI is giving very clear assurances. I have also said that depositors' interests will be protected, the monies are safe.
Sunny. In the past couple of years, there have been instances Ireland after PNC Bank and now Yes Bank, which indicates that the financial system is fragile. Is the government running a check that there are no more such, rotten apples hidden under the carpet and that we don't face it going forward, maybe some other bank or another NBFC? Does it stop here?
Well, I very clearly told you that I am closely monitoring every institution which requires that kind of a monitoring along with RBI. And today, after a protracted discussion, engagement, giving time for their own attempts to get infusion of cash and so on, if we've taken a considered view that the board will have to be supersession should happen, it is because we are closely working to make sure that no institution really collapses. We are working for restructuring, keeping the interests of the depositors and also those institutions which have invested in.
So, from business time. Ma'am, one thing, the RBI scheme says that there can be investment up to 49% in Yes Bank. So, does SBI alone have the wherewithal to invest that much into Yes Bank? A. And second, would it require infusion of money into SBI so that they are allowed to, invest into Yes Bank? And last question, the former FM has pointed out, Mr. P. Chidambaram has pointed out that the growth in the loan book in the last 5 years was exponential compared to the previous period. Since you pointed out some role of the previous government as well, so some clarity.
No, that's very clearly I've said about the exposure prior to 2014 on stressed corporates. The details of what are the kind of malignancy that Yes Bank has gone through, the RBI will come out. It's all very well. Now, I am asking a few questions about things which have happened during UPA, which have remained unanswered till today. I'm willing to answer for everything that which is happening now and also that which has happened between 2014 and 19. But I've asked a couple of questions. I would like to know about the answers for that too. For the specific question of, unbridled increase in credit, yes, the RBI is giving you pointed answers about how they've started scrutiny between 2017, what kind of action has been taken, where penalties have been levied, compliance not being one of the virtues of this bank, what kind of action has been taken, how the leadership has been changed. All these are actions in response to wrongdoing, or at least not best of practices. So those... I have not finished.
Anuradha.
I have not finished my
Anuradha.
Please. I have not finished that. So, clearly, these are answers which are being given. I am giving the answer. RBI is giving the answer. We are not evading it. You may ask me any number of times the questions which are being posed today and questions which may be posed even later. We are willing to answer. Right? But I have raised questions of how unthinkingly the steps taken by those competent, self-propelled, competent doctors have resulted in the economy till today suffering. Banking sector becoming fragile is thanks to those so-called self-appointed competent doctors. One. Second, on the SBI. As I said, I've answered that question. As we go along, you'll know as to who are the people who are investing.
Just.
RBI will give you further clarification on all that they have done.
Ma'am,
it's indeed a relief that the government and RBI has said time and again today that the depositors' interest will be taken care of. But what we are getting to know is that the net bank is not working since last night. Payments are not happening even through app. The debit cards are also not working, and some of those who have gone to the branches with checks have been given tokens and have been asked to come.
I have acknowledged that there is definitely pain being suffered by the depositors. I have acknowledged it. And I appreciate and recognize the fact that you're going into the details of that pain. I acknowledge it.
Sunil, ma'am, ma'am, RBI. You know, the SBI has said that you have said that they have evinced interest. How much are they going to put in terms of money? And do you feel that this one bank will be able to bail it out, or is there going to be a consortium, and what exactly are those? Because we need more clarity.
No, you may get the clarity, but that's exactly what Somesh also asked, and I've responded. As we go along, you will get more and more details. I've said also investors in the bank and the businesses. That's right. Those details will come along. The moratorium which is issued by the RBI said for 30 days. The moratorium for 30 days. You'll get to know gradually. Thanks.
Ma'am, slightly different question. Ma'am, the bond that Yes Bank recently written down, especially 81 bonds, which are from part of Favored Capital Lab. So that would be a confirmed to the mutual fund and out of question. And ma'am, most important, the draft scheme invites comments till 9th March. So can we expect probably the announcement finally coming into next week?
Which draft scheme? Oh, that's all right.
Last two questions.
Ma'am, will the government take any action against the erstwhile promoter, Mr. Rana Kapoor, since he pointed out it was being compliant and they were not adequately disclosing, wrongly classifying their assets? So will any action be taken against him so that he does not flee the country?
I've asked the Reserve Bank to give me an assessment from their end because they are the regulator. I want them to give me specifically a report on what has caused this problem and who are the people who they think had a role in it. That is why I very clearly said that's also something which I've asked the RBI to give.
Last one, very straight.
One is how much is the SBI going to invest in Yes Bank for 49% stake? And the second is, there have been more institutions where there was paid even before your government came to power and RBI is closely monitoring that. So do you think there could be more cases going forward or we are just over the that?
No, that's exactly what you also have asked me. I can say that I am closely monitoring, and my objective, which I have expressed in so many different press conferences, is to ensure that regulators, whether it's SEBI, whether it's Reserve Bank, and the government are all working together to ensure that stress, whether NBFC, whether banks, whether any other institution, are recognized and addressed. So we are willing to work with those institutions which are stressed out with an intention that we provide as much as time and space for them to restore their health. And in this case of Yes Bank too, as I said, from 2017, through the Reserve Bank, continuous engagement. And I must put on record that they did attempt genuinely to get more capital coming into the bank. They did attempt. And therefore, this kind of a closely monitoring along with the regulators, be it RBI, be it SEBI, be it anybody else, IRDA, I shall be monitoring with an intent of ensuring that institution stress is relieved. I told you that I have answered that question.
उसको अब 1 अप्रैल से प्रत्यक्ष साकार करने के लिए